Whoa, 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 whoa. And your life is drift away. Follow me. You can follow me. Okay, let's start the mimer, part 5. Whoa, whoa, I the 999. Let's see, what's for the 5th above? Oh, this is the one based on the. Damn, I see. Here we go, part 5. Well, let's do the review of chapter 4 first, and then we'll do part 5, okay? Sounds like a plan. Not only does the union of God's light that is Soviv Kol Almin and His light that is Mamalik Kol Almin make it possible for man to perceive the Torah and Mitzvot new every day, but moreover, this daily renewal itself also involves fusing together two opposites, a dimension transcending time and a dimension that relates to time. Okay, so not only is there the advantage of to yourself to allow you to experience the energy and vitality of understanding that when you're doing Torah and Mitzvot, you're actually eliciting the Atzmus into the world, but it also has the advantage of fusing two opposite entities that could not otherwise be fused. Give me 1 second. Hi, how are you? Picking up?
Yeah, Sharon.
Sharon, yeah. Sure. You want to receive? You're all set then. Take care. But there's also the advantage of fusing together two opposites that would otherwise not be fused together. Okay? To explain, newness involves change, right? Limitation, change, etc., the world of time and space. Newness is a break from that. Newness is from the world of Soivev. Something that did not exist previously has now, for the first time, come into being. Since time is of the fundamental aspects of the structure of the world, there's no natural way that an entity can remain continuously new. As such, continuous newness represents a fusion of time and timelessness. Something that is possible only as a result of influence from God's essence, right? Because otherwise, when Soviv is elicited into the world of time and space, it nullifies the world of time and space. This is what we call a miracle. As such, continuous newness represents a fusion of time and timelessness. Something, right? In order for something to be continuously new, that's a paradox in itself. You can't have continuous newness. Newness implies something that's changing. So for there to be continuous newness, there's a fusion of opposites there. That's what we call a paradox. Okay. Something that's possible only as a result of influence from God's essence, which is not bound by any definition and which is therefore capable of uniting these opposing qualities. Okay. Moreover, it is possible to say that the directive of the mitzvah is being performed in a manner that they be continuously as new is integrally related to the performance of the mitzvahs, for the intent of the mitzvahs is to bring about the union of the Holy One, blessed be He, and the Shekhinah. Right? What's the purpose of the mitzvahs? The mitzvahs is to unify higher and lower, male and female. The term Holy One, blessed be He refers to God as He is holy, removed, transcendent, masculine, infinite. Relating to God's light that is Soviv Kol Almin, the term Shekhinah, translated as the divine presence, is related to the word shoichin, which means to dwell. Right? It's a verb to dwell. Shoichinat maharoim ukadohishimoy, and refers to God's light. Yes.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
You know how to play the football on the TV?
Do I know how to what?
You know how to put the soccer on the TV? Please?
Which game?
It's the final play.
You have a subscription?
Is that I don't think it's fair. The Super Bowl.
No, I know what you're talking about. You need a subscription though.
What do you mean?
You need to subscribe to Fox One, or there's another one, or Fubo. If you ask Eric or what's his name if they have a Fubo account. I don't have a Fubo account. If you get one of those accounts, I can put it on.
I have one, but mine is
What?
mine is optional.
No, I know, but are you able to watch the game at your house?
Yeah.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Okay, let me look into it. What time is the game?
Yeah.
All right, let me look into it. Okay, man's divine service. The term Shechina, translated as divine presence, is related to the word shoichin, which means to dwell in the first of God's light that dwells and encloses itself in the world. Man's divine service, which draws down divine influence and must correspond to the divine influence being drawn down, right? In order to elicit a certain light, you have to act in accordance, right? You have to create a vessel to receive that particular voltage or that particular elicitation, okay? Therefore, when a person observes the mitzvahs inspired by his perception of them as being new every day, fusing time with timelessness, he augments the revelation of the unity of God's light. This of God, and his light is Malach, right? So what does he do? He uplifts. So when you view the Torah mitzvahs as being beyond the world, and you do the mitzvahs, not only do you get excited to do them, but you actually elicit a commensurate response from the world that you're doing the mitzvahs in. You actually get to see infinity within finitude. Okay, now let's get on to chapter 5 to see what that's all about. Okay, in section 1, the Rebbe quotes the Alter Rebbe's statement in Likutei Torah that when one does not view the Torah mitzvahs as continuously new, his bitterness and joy stem from matters of this world. Right? So you either can get your jollies from Torah mitzvahs, or inevitably you're going to get them from matters of this world. And the choice is obvious, which one we want, right? And then the spark of God within him is in exile within his animal soul, if he does not, right? If he doesn't view the Torah mitzvahs as new, right? This seems like a pretty serious consequence for not doing something that most people seem to not do anyways. The Rebbe then raises the question, it would seem that even when a person does not operate at such a high level of spiritual consciousness, it is still possible that his life be focused on spiritual values, not material ones, right? Why can't I still be a good person, despite the fact that I don't view the mitzvahs as being God's essence drawn down into the world here and now? Why then does the Alter Rebbe make such an absolute statement? And the answer, in the present section, the Rebbe uses yes. What's his name? Okay, in section 1, the Rebbe quotes the Alter Rebbe's statement in the Likutei Torah that when one does not view the Torah mitzvahs new or continuously new, his bitterness and joy stem from matters of this world. And then the spark of godliness within him is in exile within his animal soul. The Rebbe then raises the question, it would seem that even when a person does not operate in such a high level of spiritual consciousness, it's still possible that his life be focused on spiritual life. Right, I don't know all this Hasidic stuff, and I still am able to live with excitement about Judaism. The Alter Rebbe says, no, it's either all or nothing. So in this section, we're going to seemingly resolve that initial question that the Rebbe asked the Alter Rebbe. The two expressions, the godly light, the light that is Soviv, the light that is Mamale Kalal Min, correspond to two of God's names, Havaya and Elohim, respectively. Okay, good. So we have a definition here. We have a definition for Soviv, we have a definition for Mamale. Soviv is the light that's associated with the name Havaya. The tetragrammaton. Mamale is the light that is associated with the name that is Elohim. And many sources in Chassidus, and I guess Kabbalah for that matter, particularly Sharia Ramuna, it's explained that the godly light is identified with his name. The godly light is identified with his name Havaya, and that the kalim, the kli, the vessel that receives the light, that contains the light, and by doing so constricts the light. The revelation of the light are identified with his name, Elohim. Nevertheless, the Nartek Shema Ailim Umastir Allah or the Shem Havaya. Several other sources and Chassidus offer a different explanation. That God's name Elohim refers not only to the shield and covering that conceals and hides the light of the name Havaya, rather Ella Shekama or the Shem Havaya Kamoshin Nimshach Umitzamtim al yedei shem Elokim lios makor lanivrahim, but rather that even the light of his name Havaya, as it is drawn down and limited by his name Elokim, the light enclosed in his kalim that becomes the source of the existence of the created beings. Shebichlalos hu or hamamale nikra Elokim, which as a whole refers to the godly light that is mamale kalim and is identified with the name Elokim. Okay, so what did we just say? Since the purpose of the light is to shine in the spiritual cosmos, since it adapts itself to the structure, it can be deemed. So we're saying not. Not only is the light that's normally associated with Havaya, not only is not the light that is associated with Havaya is not limited to being Havaya, but it's also considered to be Elokim because it conforms to the vessel that receives it. Since the purpose of because it's all about the tachlis. What's the purpose? The al pi hayadua, the zeshaguf ma'alim al hanefesh hu, as is well known, the potential for the body to conceal the soul. Ki shoyresh hanefesh hu mehavaya, results from the fact that the source of the divine soul is God's name Havaya. V'shoyresh haguf hu ma'aluk me'elokim, and the source of the body is God's name Elokim. V'lachein kamoish Elokim ma'alim al Havaya. Therefore, just as God's name Elokim conceals the light that is Havaya, kain haguf ma'alim al hanefesh, so too the body conceals the light of the soul. Okay, so we just made a parallel between the light that is, or the name that is Elokim, right? Just as that conceals the name that is Yokei Vavkei, so too the body conceals the soul, the light of the soul. It's possible to say a similar concept applies with regard to God's light that are soviv kolamin mamale kolamin. Shagam or hamamale nikra Elokim kaniskar leyel. For his light that is mamale kolamin is also called Elokim, as mentioned above. For a person to know and feel that the matters of the soul are primary importance, and the material matters are secondary, there must be a union of God's light that are soviv kolamin and mamale kolamin. There must be a connection between the higher and lower, between the masculine and the feminine, the infinite and the finite. The rationale is that from the standpoint of God's light that is mamalik olamin, as it exists in and of itself, as it were, right? The vessel doesn't exist on its own. Since it is the source of the created beings, and the created beings are significant for it. True, it is God's light that is mamalik olamin that brings into being and generates life for the created beings. Nevertheless, since the light exists for that express purpose, to generate the vitality, the existence of these created beings is of significance for it. Indeed, they are the very reason for its existence. As such, yesh tfisos makom le'inyinei haguf. Material matters possess a certain degree of importance, right? Or else, how else could they contain and conceal this very powerful light? The light would just overpower it if they didn't have their own importance. Through the fusing of God's light that is sovev and male. Shigamba or kamoisha naise makoir. I.e., the revelation of God's infinite light that transcends the world shines even within God's light that becomes the source of the worlds. It's the same freaking light. For, from the perspective of God's infinite light, all existence is of no importance to Him. It is possible to attain the awareness that material matters exist solely for the sake of the soul. Okay, right. That's a perspective you can adopt. You can make very real in your life. The only reason that stuff exists is for my soul to carry out its purpose, right? Or else what? Prove me wrong. Change my mind. The influence of God's light that is mamalik olamin engenders a consciousness of existence of the worlds and of material reality within a person, right? That mamalik olamin makes me think that the world matters on its own without the spiritual vitality that's sustaining it and preceding it. Nevertheless, due to the fusing of this light with the light that is soviv kolamin, the perception of that reality is overwhelmed by the awareness of the higher light. So when you do a mitzvah, you're eliciting a higher purpose for the material matter of the world. To the extent that it is evident that godliness is the purpose of all existence. Wow, so you make godliness revealed and essential and primary in the world through causing this unification. On this basis, it's possible to explain the statement in Likutei Torah "Dechasher lo yeshnoi ha'inyan divichol yom kachadashim azay hameriros v'hatainuk sheloi he me'inyanei olam hazeh." That when one lacks the awareness that the Torah and Mitzvot are renewed each day, his bitterness and joy will stem from matters of this world. Inevitably, because he's not causing this unification, or he's not drawing down this unification and revealing this unification. As will be explained in the following section, the lack of spiritual inspiration has a twofold effect. Not only is the higher light lacking, and thus the person's performance of mitzvahs is not infused with heightened spiritual energy. In addition, he is dragged down into worldly matters. For the possibility of the fusion of God's light that are Soviet Kalmin and Mamalik Kalmin, which leads to the perspective that the matters of this world hold no independent importance for him, as explained in this section. Results from a person performing the mitzvahs, permeated by the realization that they are renewed each day, as explained at the conclusion of the previous section. Okay, so let's see what we just said. When a person lacks the awareness that the Torah and mitzvahs are renewed each day, he is functioning within the constraints of time. He is thus relating to the divine light that is Mamalik Alamin. He's limited. He's limited by the level that limits, which is Mamalik Alamin, if he doesn't understand this, what's going on the higher levels. From the standpoint of the divine light, matters of this world possess a certain measure of importance. Hence, ultimately, matters of this world will affect him and ultimately arouse within him a bitterness or joy. Right? He's going to inevitably be dragged down, so to speak. Only through exposure to the transcendent influence of the light that is Sovev Kalamin, i.e. Torah and Mitzvot, will he be able to rise above material consciousness and focus primarily on the spiritual. Let's see what AI does in terms of summarizing this paragraph. Oh, I can't wait. Lacking awareness of the Torah's daily renewal, right, making the Torah new, confines one to worldly concerns, impacting their spiritual well-being. Exposure to transcendent light enables one to transcend the material consciousness and prioritize spirituality, right? And we said having this awareness causes a fusion of these two elements. Okay, let's read the summary, and then we'll stop with this section. Section 1 cites the Alter Rebbe's statement in Likutei Torah that when one does not view the Torah and mitzvahs as new continuously, his bitterness and joy stem from matters of the soul. From matters of the world. That when one does not view the Torah and mitzvahs as new continuously, his bitterness and joy stem from the matters of the world, and then the spark of God within him is an exile within his animal soul. From the standpoint of God's light that is Mamalik Alalmin, as it exists in and of itself, as it were, since it is the source of the created beings. Since the created beings are significant for it, material matters possess a certain degree of importance. Hence, ultimately, matters of this world will affect a person and eventually arouse either bitterness or joy, only through exposure to the transcendent influence of the light that is Sovev Kalamin, i.e. Torah and Mitzvot, will he be able to rise above material consciousness and focus primarily on the spiritual and secondarily on the material. End of section. Yitzch'k, we'll stop here for today.